In this week's video, we travel back down south looking for another rare shrike species, hoping this time we don't dip it. We look for a scarce warbler and an American wading bird. Hi folks, and welcome back to another birding adventure. Firstly, please excuse that my voice isn't as normal. I'm absolutely full of cold. After a horrendous 5+ hour drive fraught with diversions and road closures, we finally ended up at our overnight destination. Hey folks, once again we're back in Suffolk. This time almost a carbon copy of the last time we were here 2 weeks ago. We've come to see a rare shrike, and we're hoping that this time we won't dip it like last time. I'm just about to go out. It's reasonably early. Kelly's just going to catch me up soon, and hopefully see a brown shrike, one that's missing off our shrike list. Exciting. Travelling all this way again after dipping the last shrike we came to Suffolk for 2 weeks ago seemed a bit of a risk, especially as we had to be home in North Wales early the following day. Regardless, the prospect of another lifer and a shrike that's missing off of our list seemed a little too hard to ignore, so we were back, and I was out in the rain with one other birder who very quickly got a brief view of the shrike, although I just saw a shape diving into the undergrowth. Soon though, as more birders showed up, our target species was spotted again in the distance. It was perched on the edge of a tree really close to the road, very near to where we'd parked the van in a lay-by, and probably closer to Kaylee, who was still in the van getting ready, than me watching it from a distance. I excitedly watched the bird for a short time, then sent Kaylee a message saying it's here, it's near the road. Unfortunately though, by the time she'd read the message, the shrike had flown from its perch into the undergrowth. So, although I was over the moon to see it and to get it onto our year list, our mission now was to try and get Kaylee to get a view of it. Hey folks, it didn't take long until it briefly showed. It was on a branch in the distance, but that was amazing. That was great. I'm going to stick around, hope it shows more. Stick with me. Kaylee soon joined me, and we took our place amongst the other birders, who were looking at a patch of scrub and brambles where they thought the brown shrike may have flown into. It was now a bit of a waiting game, hoping for our target species to show itself once again. But possibly due to the wind and the rain, it seemed to be hunkering down. Luckily though, the forecast did look better as the morning went on, and the rain soon stopped. After a short time, the brown shrike showed itself briefly in the bottom of some conifer trees, before very obligingly coming out and standing on an exposed dead branch. And although still reasonably distant, there was no mistaking this bird, with its very uniformly brown back. This individual is a first winter bird as opposed to an adult, and when first seen a few days before, was initially reported as a red-backed shrike, until soon being re-identified as a brown shrike. If you remember a couple of videos ago when we were here in Suffolk and failed to see the red-tailed shrike, we mentioned that there was a brown shrike in Pembrokeshire. That then left. I wonder if this is the same bird. Hey folks, I've just gone back to the van to get another layer because it is absolutely freezing. Kaylee's over there. We've just seen the shrike again a minute ago, and it perched up on the top of a distant branch, but that was absolutely unreal. Right, we're going to go back to see if it shows again. This is epic. After grabbing another coat from the van, I joined Kaylee and the other birders again, who had eyes on the shrike once more. It had now flown onto a fence line a little bit further in the distance. Now the rain had stopped and the wind had died down at least a little bit, it seemed visibly more active, moving slowly along the fence line, occasionally picking up insects and eating them. As the shrike moved along the fence line, we moved along the path that was opposite it, over the moon to spend time with this fantastic bird. The brown shrike is an Asian species, breeding in Central and Northern Asia and wintering from India down into Southeast Asia. In the UK, the brown shrike is a very rare visitor, with somewhere between 40 and 50 records of this species ever, and a good chunk of those were in Shetland. The one that was seen in Pembrokeshire a couple of weeks ago was potentially the first record of this species ever in Wales, and this one, correct me if I'm wrong, may be the first ever one spotted in Suffolk. So, a pretty special bird. By now it was spending quite a bit of its time at the end of the fence line, jumping from fence post to the floor, catching food and then jumping up either onto another fence post or onto the wire. We watched it for some time, chatting to some of the other birders, including some of our subscribers, until it suddenly flew to the ground. It had been spooked by an incoming kestrel. This wonderful female kestrel had cleared any small birds out of the area and landed on a fence post, one of the ones that the shrike had previously been sat on. After the kestrel had vanished, it took quite a while for the shrike to show again. At this point, we decided to head back in the direction of the van. As we got further down the path, we noticed a lot of the birders had followed us, and it turns out the shrike had two. It had landed on the top of a bramble not far away from us, giving fantastic, although brief views. It sat on this bramble briefly and then flew back into the undergrowth, only to give us a parting gift before we left of a really close view, although extremely briefly, in a close bush. This had been really special.
Hey folks, we definitely got that. That was absolutely stunning and kind of even worth the ridiculous drive that was last night.
We got really good views though, didn't we?
Yeah, we got great views, sometimes distant and sometimes brief, and with quite a bit of wind, but still fantastic.
It was brilliant.
Absolutely stunning. I don't know what to do next. This was all our eggs in one basket.
This was the plan.
So I'm glad we didn't dip this one. Stick with us, let's see what we do next.
Despite a lengthy and frustrating diversion, we headed northwest.
Hey folks, we've come about an hour and a half-ish in the direction of home.
Trying to avoid the closed railway line.
Yeah, trying to diversion-tastic. To a little village that I can't remember the name of, but I'll put it up on screen. We've come to try and find a yellow-browed warbler that's been spotted here over the last couple of days. So that's one we haven't picked up on our year list yet, so let's see if we can find it.
We'd come to the River Lark in Mildenhall. Earlier, there'd been a yellow-browed warbler spotted here. And we had noticed that we didn't have many vagrant warblers on our year list yet. This time last year, we'd already seen a good few, including the rarest bird we'd ever seen in the UK, the pale-legged leaf warbler. So it was definitely time to tick this species off. But first we had to find it. Although when we arrived at the place the pin had been dropped on bird guides, the only thing we were greeted with was something that would certainly make a lot of warblers disappear off. A kestrel. We waited for Mr. Kestrel to leave, and when he did, we wandered up and down the riverbank, hoping to hear the yellow-browed warbler, a species that has quite a distinctive call. But after quite a wait, we'd heard nothing.
So folks, at the moment, no warblers at all. Oh, I heard something. It is very windy. I heard something. I don't know. Not looking very positive.
We persevered for another half an hour or so, but mindful that it was getting later and later and we had one more rarity to try and find, we waved the white flag and reluctantly gave up, hoping that we still might have a chance with this species in the coming weeks.
Hey folks. Wah, wah, wah. I hope you can hear us because someone's got an extremely loud lawnmower. No yellow-browed warbler. We didn't hear it, we didn't see it. It didn't appear to be there.
That probably isn't helping.
No, that probably isn't assisting the situation.
I'm going to go with that.
Nevertheless, we're going to move on now because we've got one other place to be before it goes dark.
That other place was about an hour and a half again northwest,
to the beautiful Eyebrook Reservoir, and hopefully an American wading bird that had been spotted on previous days.
Hey folks, we are at Eyebrook Reservoir in Leicestershire and Rutland, in the hope of trying to find an American golden plover that's been reported here. We've just had a look up the lane. There are some golden plovers, but we'll look.
Lights against us this time.
The light's against us and it's slowly starting to get dark. So we're going to drive around the other side, hoping I can find somewhere to park and see if we can see it from there. If not, if night comes before we see it, maybe we'll have another go in the morning.
We soon arrived at the other side and parked the van on a grass verge, and headed to join the few other birders that were looking over the water and mud in front of us. The light was far better from this side, and there were loads of golden plover here. But after talking to the other birders, the American golden plover hadn't been seen since that morning, and one of the birders had been there for over 2.5 hours. Although this didn't really bode well, we stuck around with the hope that it might show up to roost here. Joining the golden plovers here, there were large flocks of lapwing. Some would take to the sky, making their distinctive peewit sound. On the edge of the water there were loads of gulls, including really good numbers of common gull, a species that, despite its name, isn't one of the more common species of gull in the UK. As the light got lower, the golden plovers were joined by more, but still no American golden plover. Regardless, we remained positive, with Kaylee continuing to scan the flock. Overhead, a red kite soared majestically in the sky. Although it was well into the evening, and we'd potentially failed to see 2 of the 3 birds we travelled to see, there was worse places to spend your evening. And that is something that sometimes we forget about whilst birding. We can get tied up in finding that target species and forget about how amazing it is just being out and about amongst wildlife and all these other fantastic bird species and wonderful scenery. And although admittedly it is frustrating when you travel and miss the birds you're looking for, and we always want to get good footage for you guys, the people who watch our videos and keep our channel alive. Sometimes though, the birds have different ideas, and that is the reality of birding. Back to our search. Now most of the birds here were disappearing off to roost. That included the flocks of golden plovers, who had now taken to the sky. They flew around doing circles round this end of the reservoir for a while, until they disappeared. Unfortunately, without us getting any sighting of the American golden plover that we were looking for. At this point, we suspect it may have left. Regardless, we were getting cold and quite hungry and ready to call it a night.
Hey folks, unfortunately our second dipped bird of the day.
But we did get the shrike.
We did get the shrike, so that saved the day really. There's a few other birders here, and some of them have been here for a few hours, but it hadn't been around. There were loads of other golden plovers. There's loads of birds here actually. It was
there's loads.
pretty cool.
And it's quite large as well, so it could be anywhere.
Yeah, it could be anywhere along the bank. So we're going to stay nearby and have a quick look before we have to go home in the morning. So stick with us for that. But now we're going to chill out, maybe have a beer, and call it a night. See you in the morning.
The following morning I got up really early, and it was very, very cold. But I thought maybe I had one last chance with the American golden plover, if by chance it hadn't left.
Morning folks, we're still at Eyebrook Reservoir, hoping that in the short time we've got here this morning we might see that American golden plover that we missed yesterday. We are on a very short window today as we need to get home as we're taking the girls on holiday. So, stick with us, let's see if we do find it.
I left Kaylee still sleeping in the van and wandered up the path alongside the water, where there were some geese, but visibly no golden plover at all. Maybe they'd come back. So I headed up towards a bridge where there were some bird feeders to see what was there. En route seeing a kestrel in the distance sat on a post. When I arrived at the bird feeders, there were quite a few birds coming back into, mostly blue tits and great tits. The last time I was here I had brief views of marsh tit, but none showed up today, so I headed back down the path towards the water's edge, hoping that maybe some golden plover may have returned. En route I did spot a bird of prey, which I believe is a sparrowhawk. It flew over the water and then dived down quickly. I lost it with the camera but did see it with my eyes chasing some small birds. When I got back to the van, Kaylee was up and about, but there still weren't any golden plovers, and as time was short we decided to leave. But we'd left just enough time for one last short visit, and hopefully one more target species.
Folks, after a couple of dips yesterday, this is our final hurrah. We've come to Thornton Reservoir in the hope of finding another bird for our year list, a jack snipe. There was one reported here yesterday, none yet today, but fingers crossed we can end this video on a positive. Stick with us, see if we find it.
We didn't have very long, so we were really keeping our fingers crossed we could end our trip and this video with a successful sighting. So we walked down the path past all the gulls, tufted ducks and geese towards a small wooden building called the Fisherman's Hut, which looks over at a reed bed where the jack snipe had been seen over the last couple of days. Although today it had not yet been reported. Regardless, we were still hopeful. When we arrived, there were some other birders there, and one gentleman that had been there since quite early in the morning had seen the jack snipe really well about an hour previously, and not so well but briefly about half an hour previously. So, with only about an hour to spare, we were really hoping the birding gods would give us this one. Scanning over at the distant reed bed, we did notice some movement, but this was a young moorhen. So we continued to wait. Watching all the other birds around us, there were plenty of black-headed gulls that were being fed by passers-by, and a few other gulls interspersed with them, mainly lesser blackback gulls. On the pontoon to our right, there was a cormorant drying off, and plenty more in the water too. This species was incredibly numerous here. In the far distance there was a tree full of little egrets, and in the water in front, a great crested grebe. This place definitely had no shortage of good birding. Looking back at the pontoon, our cormorant had been joined by a lot of friends whilst we weren't looking. But our attention was brought back to the reed bed, where I noticed a shape a little bit further left from where the jack snipe had last been reported. False alarm though. This was the larger common snipe. This individual roosting next to the reed bed, looking really quite camouflaged. Time was getting on, and it looked like we might fail to see yet another bird. That was until, whilst watching that young moorhen again, I saw some movement behind it. At first I wasn't sure, but as I continued to watch, the shape that was behind the reeds was bobbing up and down. This had to be the jack snipe. Myself, Kaylee and the other birders watched this shape move from behind the reeds, finally coming out into the open enough for us to definitely confirm this was the target species we were looking for. The fantastic and always comical jack snipe. It didn't stay in view for long. It soon moved right and disappeared back behind the reeds. We waited though, and after a short while, it continued out of the reed bed briefly again, giving us some short but good views of this stunning little bird. This species don't breed in the UK, but do come here to winter. And although look quite similar to our common snipe, are much smaller, and have a very characteristic and fantastically comical bobbing motion as they feed, looking almost like they're on a spring or desperate for a wee.
I genuinely love this species and I'm super happy to get it on our year list. Our jack snipe friend disappeared behind the reeds again. We waited for a little bit longer, but it didn't show, so we headed back towards the van.
Hey folks, success.
We got it.
We got it. When we arrived, someone had seen it kind of briefly about half an hour before, but apparently half an hour before that it had been like dancing in front of everybody. Anyway, it came out of the reed bed. No, we didn't get that. It came out of the reed bed briefly, did a bit of bouncing and then disappeared back into it. But that is enough. So, another one for the year list. Thanks so much for watching. Please like,
Please subscribe.
and please press that notification bell.
I'm going to run back the van now before that rain comes.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to rain, and it's really cold. See you next time.
Bye.